Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of whatever this will be. I've always joked about opening a podcast. I've always said, I saw a lot of weird podcasts around. I should open one. I should just say whatever is on my mind. I should just speak about what's flowing again and again, day by day, because people do that all the time, every day. But I've always postponed it because I was so afraid of doing that. So I'm really not sure what exactly will happen with this small project, but let's give it a try. And I will just treat this project like some sort of journal, let's say. I don't like strict rules, so I believe that I will not have rules also on this one. Like, I don't even want to choose a specific type of content. I will just say whatever is on my mind when I feel like it, and that's it. And in this moment I realized that I like listening to my friends. I like to be there for them, support them, and I'm very understanding of their behaviors because I look at them in their big picture. But I'm not able to do the same with myself. I'm not as kind with myself. I don't understand myself in the way in which I try to do with others. So what I thought would be a good idea was to analyze whatever behavior or type of thoughts that I have during the days. Would be a good idea, because with a thought in the back of my mind that this will arrive also to others, and I want others to relate or to feel that listening to this is helpful, maybe I will also be able to analyze my own behavior and my own thoughts with the kindness that I usually try to give my friends and my family. So I thought it would be nice to just try to open my public journal, let's say, about whatever thoughts I have in my mind, and just reflect on how to improve and how to be better, let's say. But I've always postponed it because of a big fear of judgment that I have. And this will be the first topic of this journal, because this is what led me in postponing a lot these short and simple videos that I'm going to do. I was super afraid about what others will think, about maybe the topics that I have are not important enough, maybe what I feel is just so simple and lame. Maybe others will not relate, or maybe they will think that I'm stupid. So I try to analyze, why exactly am I feeling this way? Because in my everyday life, I actually am very much afraid of judgment. This led me in being a very big people pleaser. I don't like to say no, or at least if I do so, it with a very big anxiety. So I started to ask myself, where does this come from? And usually, the answer to this usually is always during the childhood. Something happened there that we need to analyze or remember to understand why exactly we are this way and why we are behaving like this. So during this analysis, let's say, I started thinking about my mom. And she's not the villain of this story, but she had many villains in her own story, because she grew up in a very religious household. Her family was, as I said, very religious, very strict. They had rules for everything. They had many rules about clothes. They had rules about who to speak to and who not to speak to. They had rules about what to do outside that house, if they were allowed to go out, because usually they just stayed in the house within themselves. And the issue that my mom had, the big fault that she had, was that she was very curious about the world outside those gates. She was very curious in knowing what else was there for her. She was always curious about studying more and seeing more places, but she was not allowed to do so. And especially her family noticed that she didn't want to be compliant with all those rules, and this led her in having a lot of issues in the house. And for this reason, she felt more and more excluded from the family because all the others seemed like they belonged in some way more than her, for sure. And I'm not going to go into details because, this is a first for me. So I'm just going to say that after many years, because she was in her 20s, um, she decided to escape and she left that place. And what I like to say, what I believe that happened, what I think now in my own reflections, is that she probably just left that place with her body, but not with her mind. And this usually happens to people that live through trauma and they live bad things in their lives. They may decide to leave a toxic environment, toxic family, toxic relationship, but at the same time, it's human to just want to not accept what happened. And human mind is wonderful. It's trying to protect itself. So what I noticed that my mom was doing was that she still had all those thoughts and judgments in her mind, even if she was not there anymore, but she was still keeping everything with her in some way, like she wanted to replicate those situations and gaining the love that she didn't have during the childhood. She wanted to earn it maybe in the adulthood, so when she was old and not in that house anymore. So she was always afraid of their judgment. She was afraid to meet maybe one of her family members in the city while walking, and maybe she was wearing pants at the time, and she was so afraid that maybe they would judge her for that reason. And she did the best for me, honestly, but of course her fear passed through me also, because even if this family doesn't want to have big involvement in lives of people that don't live there, still during those small conversations, maybe those 2 times a year, I felt the judgment, and I was very angry in feeling that judgment, but at the same time, that influenced me in some way. I remember when I was like, I don't know, 6 years old or something like that, and I was wearing earrings. I liked them very much. But my aunt, she told me, when we die, the parts of your body that helped you during a sin will be hanged by in hell. And I remember very much, I remember very well this conversation because I was so afraid of dying, especially because I used to like these things. Even if I was little, I looked at makeup with fascination. I wanted to wear makeup when I would be older, but yeah, those words kept being there in the back of my mind. And now that I'm old, I honestly am still very afraid of their judgment and the judgment of others. It was like I was never accepted by them. I never felt love from them. So I started looking for love elsewhere. I wanted to gain some respect and approval from people that I didn't know. Like, it didn't make any sense because these people were nothing for me. They were just strangers. Even people I didn't know. I'm not even speaking about just friends. But I wanted them to accept me. I wanted to show that I was not as sinful as my family was saying, that I was a good person. And I started feeling like saying no, for example, was a very bad sin because that would confirm, that would disappoint someone in my life, and maybe that would confirm that I'm a bad person. And probably, yes, I believe that was the start of everything for me, for my own experience. And I started thinking about the beginning of this experience because I believe that the first step in order for me to change, in order for me to improve, is understanding what was the beginning, what was the start of all, and why I became this way. for me to try to change the point of view. And since when I started to realize where this all comes from, I started also to question my day to day behavior. So, if, for example, someone would ask me, do you want to hang out? Maybe I didn't want to hang out. I would notice that I would just say yes just because I was afraid. I would question myself, like, why am I saying yes to this person? Just because they don't get angry at me, just because I want them to think that I'm, a cool person, a good friend. A, I mean, what was the reason? Or was I doing that for me because I wanted to hang out? And once I started to question myself that, I started understanding how many things I was doing just for others or just for them to notice me as a good person instead of just doing it for me or doing whatever I wanted to do. I started noticing that probably also for that reason, I was able to be kind to others, kind to my friends, or understanding for others, but I was not able to forgive myself for even the smallest things. And what I started to do was to just try to replace those phrases in my mind, those phrases that were telling me, if you say no, you're a bad person. If you do this, you're a bad person. I was just trying to replace them by just saying, that's not true. You don't want to do that, right? You don't feel like it. I'm not saying it's an easy process because I believe that it takes time to change something that is so much ingrained in your head. But big things don't change in the blink of an eye. Big things, they change throughout, a lot of trying probably. For the same fear of judgment, I also started not to do the things I loved for the fear of being judged, for the fear of people thinking, what is she doing? She's ridiculous, right? What also helped me was thinking, but if one of my friends told me, look, I want to do something, I want to open this project, I want to start doing this, but I'm afraid of what the others will think of me, what am I going to say? Am I going to say, you're right? Or am I going to say, why do you care? Like, go for it, right? I think most of us will say that. But then when it comes to you, I don't know. I don't know what happens. Like, it's just like people that will relate to what I'm saying will understand that we are not able to be kind to ourselves for some reason. Doesn't make any sense. Because we are the only person that will live with ourselves for the rest of our life. And in the end, if we think about it, like, I'm not even trying to pretend that I'm a saint. I'm not going to say that I never judge anyone in my mind. I never say, what is that person wearing or whatever that is. But I can also recognize that that ends there. Like, there might be a small judgment in my head. But after that, I go back to my life and I really don't care because everyone is so involved with their own person, their own lives, that yes, maybe they can use people as gossip or they can use situations just to say, what is that person doing? But in the end, they actually don't really care that much. So what's the point in stopping being yourself or doing things that you love just because others will think bad of you? And honestly, another thing that I noticed, that I realized actually, is that we cannot be loved by all the people around us. It's impossible. I've always tried to be kind and polite to people. I always tried to be liked, but I've been judged regardless, right? Like I tried, I was just trying to have a different outcome, like my mom was doing, just, to get some approval from people around me, but I was still judged. And that doesn't mean that we don't have to be kind, but that means that probably it's worth it to just respect our own person and just do whatever we like without, of course, hurting any other person in the process. But um, it's for sure not worth it to just throw everything, you know, just because you are afraid of what others will think. Of course, I'm not at the end of this process, right? Like, this is probably just the beginning. But as I said, big changes don't happen in the blink of an eye. And the start of changing is, just the realization of the awareness of what is happening in the back of our minds. And this is the reason why, in the end, I decided to still do this, still in my comfort zone in some way, but still do this because it's something that I would like to do. And people will judge regardless. And it doesn't make any sense to stop our lives because of something that will happen even if we don't do anything. Imagine just staying at your place without doing anything, without any type of projects, without, trying to bothering anyone. You will still be judged probably because, you don't hang out, you don't do much, etc., etc. Like, any type of action can be judged by the person that has the willing to judge you. Nothing will stop those people from doing that. So what's the point? So yeah, I'm not here to be a philosopher or a teacher in any way. I just felt like maybe sharing some of my reflections could be good for me and good for those people that relate to the same things that I went through or that I think. And this will more or less be the sense of this journal. Yeah, let's call it this way because I have no idea still what I'm doing. So thank you so much if you listened until here. And if you resonated with anything that I said, even in this simple episode, just let me know because of course that helps me understanding if anything that I'm doing makes sense in this moment. Thank you for staying and see you next time.